Welcome to the Worldbuilder's Anvil, episode 211. Worldbuilder's best friend, a fish out of water. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the Worldbuilder's Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, my name is Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And angrily yours at the world of dentistry, I am Michael Miller.
Oh, okay. So you did that. I thought you were going to go you meant like angular?
Like,
like a fish?
Angling?
Yes. But you were...
Yes, no, I'm still very angry about the whole dentist bit. Jeff and I just had a big conversation before we started the show. The long and the short of it is I need some really expensive dentistry done, and it's more than what I was originally quoted, and I'm very mad about it because it's one of these things where had I gotten some work done that literally would have cost me $150 when I was young and dumb, like 20, actually, I was probably younger than 20. I moved 21, so I was probably 22, 23 years old. Had I done the $150 investment on my teeth then, it wouldn't cost me close to $4,000 now.
Yes. This goes, I would imagine, to most of the young men listening, because at least all the young men I know were like this, myself included, obviously. And that is just do it.
Yeah, learn from my mistake, young people.
Because you're not going to sit there and go,
take care of your teeth.
In like a week or two, I'll take care of this. But what that means is you won't. Yeah. It's not going to get taken care of.
Take care of your teeth, take care of your body, take care of your car. Once you start being a real adult, these things are so stupid expensive.
But of course, right now, if you're actually that age listening, you're just thinking how stupid we are. And I can appreciate that. So, touche.
So today we're kind of doing something like the episode we did just recently. We had the Soothsayer episode where we're doing archetypes. And what we're doing today is not really an archetype. No. But it's close.
Well, yeah, it's a heavily used trope. It's like, literally, it's like thinking up stuff. It was like, kind of like I had to pull myself back and go, stop. Because it's like characters and movies where this is used in. Some of my favorite fiction uses this very well. And but the fish out of water.
Half of this episode could literally be time travel. Like every time travel story, there is some fish out of the water element.
Oh, and for those of you keeping track, my child is born again in this episode. So 209 born, 210 not born, 211 born, and you'll have to find out for 212.
Yeah, we'll see. I for one am voting stillborn. Still, born.
Probably not the best words to use for that.
I realized as I said that, I'm like, that doesn't sound right. I'm like, I don't mean stillborn. I mean born also.
Still
born
in continuity terms.
Yes. Still existent in current continuity. But today we're talking about fish out of water. The fish out of water.
Moving on.
Although, I suppose if he was no longer born, then he would be fish out of water once born again?
Would that make him like unstill?
Unborn. No, that's a
something else. So, no, don't.
What?
Don't.
No, you don't want him unborn.
Well, no, I don't want to think of that as a porn movie name. Did you say?
No, horror.
Oh,
horror movie.
Thank God.
How did you get to porn from horror?
I guess I just heard the OR in there.
My God!
And knowing your sickness.
Well, the thing is, there's the movie Dead Alive where there is an unbirth in it. And it's horrific and gross and totally fantastic if you're into really gory old school horror movies. So go watch the movie Dead Alive. It's also I think it's called Brain Dead in other countries.
Was that a Carpenter movie?
Peter Jackson's first movie.
Okay. All right.
Anyway.
So now back to our fishing expedition. Away from our children. We're now talking about a trope essentially a fish out of water. And for some reason, over the years, there's another trope that is similar in wordage called like a duck to water. And my brain had over the years kind of pushed into a duck out of water, which makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, ducks leave water all the time.
Yeah, and they're typically born on land, so I mean that's really a silly way to put it.
I'm not familiar with a duck out of water.
Well, there's no such thing because it's like a duck to water.
A duck to water. So what is that?
So that's someone who very easily would pick something up. So that would be the trope.
You're talking about the expression.
The
like
expression.
Somebody takes to it like a duck to water.
Exactly.
Okay,
but I sort of merged that with the fish out of water, which creates something that makes no sense.
But is that a story trope or no?
Oh yes, most definitely. Like a duck to water, because that's your character.
Is a trope.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's your savant style characters who just they get like thrown into a world, and like the first like few paragraphs of the book they can't understand what the people are saying, but by page 10 they're fluent.
So like a young Atreides in Dune.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like that would be a perfect example right there.
I'm good for stuff like that.
But this is what I like a lot for world building, because one of the great curses of world building is it doesn't make sense to share the stuff story-wise if it's not relevant to the characters. So that if there's interesting details that you want to get to, which will enrich your story, a fish out of water could be used because since they don't understand it, it will stick out to them.
When you're saying them, are you referring to the reader or the other characters?
The other characters it makes sense to. So like if it was just all like say that like the one culture, no one would think to reveal certain world building aspects. But you can use a fish out of water character to actually start sharing some of those because it would be novel to them as well.
Right. The fish out of water character is the very approachable character for introducing a fantastical world to the reader or your viewer or game player.
And it's actually
they're new to the world as well as the characters, so it's very approachable. And
the interesting thing is like one of the old, very old genre utopias. Actually, one of the genre requirements is the main character is a fish out of water. And that's how all of those worlds were exposed to readers from the time of, not Thomas Becket, the other guy who got killed by Henry VIII, who wrote the book Utopia, which created the genre.
I am.
Is that the I am guy?
I am Henry VIII, I am.
Oh no! His counselor who was no more, who is am not.
What? You lost me there.
He had a bishop counselor, a really religious Catholic counselor, who got on his wrong side, basically because he wanted a divorce, wouldn't give it to him. So over time, it turned into treason because it was Henry VIII, and so they lopped off his head. But he wrote the first book that created the utopian genre called Utopia. Yep. Yay. Okay. And so now, typically, the way this is used in fiction is it's sometimes used to intensify dramatic or humor in stories. Usually humor, I think, more often than not, but it could most definitely intensify the drama. Think of taking back, characters to ancient civilization that like committed blood sacrifices, and to really convey the emotion, the negative emotions that we have today about it, you need someone out of water to be shocked and disgusted by the idea of ritual sacrifice of humans. So you can use it for drama, but I think typically when you see it in fiction, it's mainly used for comedy, but there's some drama in there as well too.
It immediately, of course, getting back to time travel reminds me of like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey or Excellent Adventure.
They were like a fish out of water anywhere they were.
Well, yeah, I guess kind of because they were so weird. But definitely, obviously, whenever they were going back in time, they were very much out of water. Or, well, this is kind of a terrible movie, but it made me think of it, like Black Knight with Martin Lawrence.
Black Knight.
Martin Lawrence.
I know Martin Lawrence. I don't know if I'm recognizing that movie though. Maybe I got lucky. It sounds like.
Yeah, it had its moments.
So worth watching, but you wouldn't call it good
I don't know if it's worth watching now. It was worth watching 15 years ago.
Okay. Yes. So, but essentially, there are a few characters that come to my mind when I think of utopias, or not utopias, fish out of water concept. My most favorite of all time is definitely, and I don't even remember the name of the character, but it was the Tom Hanks character from the movie Big.
Josh.
This is another reason why Michael's on the show, because he knows all this crap.
What is his last name? Let me think about it. I'm not going to IMDb it. I want to get it. It's definitely his first name's definitely Josh. I'm trying to remember the last.
I'll take your word for it because I have no clue. I just call him the Tom Hanks character because that's how good I am with names. But brief background for someone who hasn't seen it. It's not a spoiler. It's the concept of the whole movie. It is a young kid.
Baskins. Josh Baskins.
It's not a body switch. I think it's just he's has a bigger body when he wakes up, if I remember correctly, but so he's all of a sudden a grown up, and I think he was a young kid, like 7 or 8 at the most.
No, he was like 13.
Wow, I'm way off there. But
yeah,
he's a young. That shows how old I am now, because a really young kid, like 8 or like 22, something like that.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah. So. But that is a great one. Obviously, mainly used for comedic effort to point out some of the silly rituals adults have, especially in the workplace, and sort of taking a company and bringing sort of joy back to the workplace.
There was a lot of good stuff in that movie. It's I mean, obviously.
It's a great movie.
We could go on and on about Big. So if you haven't seen the movie Big, go look it up. Go watch the movie.
There'll be links in the show notes if you want to throw some affiliate dollars our way.
The funny thing is, actually, I'm gonna mention one thing about that movie. We could spend a whole episode on it, and we should at some point. But there is an idea that they pose in that movie that is basically an iPad. They talk about. Yeah, they basically. And
that's one of Josh's ideas.
That's one of Josh's idea of making a comic book that is interactive and that you can, move the story along with your hand and change things. And it's basically the concept of doing it like an iPad.
Yeah, like it'd be an app on an iPad, but where you could actually manipulate it. No, cool. Yeah, maybe I'll have to go back and rewatch that. It's been years. Now the next one is pretty much every character in an apocalypse story, at least the protagonists are pretty much always fish out of water.
You think so? Apocalypse stories?
Oh, most definitely. I think like Mad Max, it's like every little group they come up with is its own sort of semi-culture along the way. The first Mad Max movie itself was shortly after the apocalypse as things are changing. So pretty much everyone in the world at that point was a fish out of water. But in the later ones, Mad Max especially, every story is a fish out of water. He goes to the Thunderdome town, whichever that was called, and all those movies. He's always a fish out of water. He never quite fits in wherever he is.
Yeah, but I would
and then they play the lone wolf sort of version of it, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, I'd say I would argue that. I would definitely argue with you on that one, because to me that doesn't play like fish out of water, because he does belong in that universe, like definitely.
It's not about belonging in the universe. So it's not necessarily so much like, and it can be, but it's you are in an element that you don't understand. So you're learning some of the things along the way, and there's humor and drama wrapped around that. So in its very core sense, it fits completely the definition, because it's, these little tribes that form up, and he's always the outsider in that tribe. He's never the tribe leader. Even with the kids in the movie with the kids in the apocalypse, he was still the outsider coming in. So,
I suppose.
Now you could argue there's a lone wolf character on top of that.
I think there's room for debate there. I think that you're stretching.
No, there's not. No, there's not. No,
no, there isn't.
There's room to be wrong for you, of course, but
Oh, for me, there's room to be wrong, but not for you.
No, because it's simple, right? Because the whole idea is it's an outsider put into something different. Now, it's more subtle than it would be like with Tom Hanks and Big, but one of the points of showing it is it doesn't have to be an extreme. You know, it's like Mad Max has seen stuff similar to those cultures along his road, but when he goes into the new movie, he is a character being inserted into a new group every time. That's the formula.
All right, fair enough.
And like I said, if the apocalypse just happens, everyone in the world at that point, like, you know, a good one here would be Walking Dead, I think. Everyone in Walking Dead, you know, in season 1 are a fish out of water because it just happened. So people are trying to just figure out how to survive in that world. Now, another one of my favorites would kind of maybe push Tom Hanks here would be McFly. And McFly is symbolic of every time traveler in fiction because they're going to a place that they have never been before.
I think I'm still stuck on, and I might need a little elaboration here, and I think this is important elaboration for the listener. Mm-hmm. I think you and I have a different definition of fish out of water.
Yes.
Are you saying that it's going to qualify as a fish out of water if the character that we're following is being used as a conduit for the avatar, for the viewer, the listener, the game player, as a means to deliver the world? As opposed,
it's not just about delivering the world, but it's they're stumbling through the differences.
Well, because the reason I point that out is because when you say that, stumbling through the world, discovering the world, that makes me think that by that loose definition, any character in a new scenario could be plugged into this category, and I don't think that's quite appropriate. Which
the difference is though, it's a different time period.
Well, let me finish though. Like the reason I want to argue the Mad Max bit is because he understands that world. He belongs in that world. When he comes across new subcultures, and like most of the time, he knows what they are and how they work, and he just feels like it's almost like he's got a lone wolf thing going on, but he's also got like he's a remnant of an old time. Because
which makes him a fish out of water.
Well, hang on.
The remnant of an old time makes him a fish out of water.
The distinction I'm making here is it's not that he can't function in those; it's that he chooses not to. Whereas somebody like a Marty McFly who has time traveled, it's like holy shit! It's a totally different society that is harder to.
No, it wasn't. That's what he knew about.
Well, yeah, but different technologies.
It's a couple decades ago.
Everything's. I know, but it's a very then allow me to use a more extreme example. We'll stick with time travel, and you go with like a Bill and Ted's,
or
like they might
Connecticut Yankee. Yeah,
Connecticut Yankee is another great example. But like you get my point.
No, I get your point, but the difference is you're saying because of intentionality that makes a difference. And that's a detailed difference in how they're creating the character. And yes, I completely agree. There's a hybrid of Lone Wolf in with a Mad Max character, most definitely. And if we were doing a Lone Wolf episode, I'd probably bring him up as well again. But the thing is, he's still a fish out of water, even if it's by choice. And probably you're getting stuck because I say bumbling around, but I'm not inferring intentions or cleverness about it. And it doesn't always need to be extreme. You know, it's like when he gets in trouble in the Thunderdome movies, it's whether it's his choice or not, he is resisting the order of Tina Turner City. Once again, showing how good I am with names.
I would love to know what you just said, but all the audio just cut out for me, so I didn't hear any of your prior sentence.
Yeah, no. So essentially, it was just a little bit about like how whether or not he chose to do it or it was because he didn't understand it. It's irrelevant. That is a character decision.
All right, fair enough.
That's the way you're delivering the character.
All right. So the long and the short of it is your definition is a little looser than mine.
Yes, most definitely. Mine is very much just exactly that. You know, and like I said, it's always good to hybrid things together to make them a little bit more rich. Yeah. And the next one I have to bring up here is William Stewart, which is the lead character for my book, which if hopefully at some point I can get finished and out there. And not so much in the first book, but he becomes a fish out of water as the story moves along, because he starts interacting more with he's a peasant. He starts getting interacting more with nobility, which is a completely different world where he lives. And so there's fish out of water stuff that happens with him because of that.
See, that I like, when there's a societal fish out of water difference. Like, for instance, Malcolm Reynolds, when he gets in the episode where it's the sword fight because of Inara. Defending Inara's honor. Mm-hmm. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, I'm referencing Firefly. And if you haven't seen every episode of Firefly, then please pause this episode, go watch every episode of Firefly, and then return.
Yes. It will make your life that much
You'll
better.
thank me for it. And you'll also get a lot of references that I make every now and then, because Firefly is fantastic. Serenity's good. Firefly's awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed Serenity. I think I would have enjoyed it with or without Firefly, but Firefly was exceptional.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Bright, I like it that you have Bright on here.
Well, I just, because I had just seen it, and I know it got critically panned, and I get why.
I know, and I don't understand why.
I do. It was very over obvious, and and like a lot of the stuff it was doing, but it was so well executed.
The thing is, though,
the acting was good. It was enjoyable.
It needed to be approachable. And
yes, it made it very approachable.
They made it approachable. Like, getting that balance right. Because for me, when I watch that movie, it doesn't need to be called Bright. It needs to be called Shadowrun. Because that's
that's exactly what I thought too. Yep.
It's Shadowrun.
We'll have to get in contact with Derek and make sure he is gone through the movie.
It's definitely Shadowrun-esque. With obviously a different history, because they reference it going back thousands of years, and that's not how the Shadowrun world works.
It's more of an all-Earth rather than a deviation.
Yes. Well, I mean, Shadowrun, the whole world has been transformed, but the way
it was from an event, not from like. This was like a world they grew up together.
Yes, this world has always, like, there has always been elves and orcs and dwarves and everything. They have always been. It's just that, this is what we're dealing with.
And it's one of those that I think you'll never see a good rating for Bright from professional reviewers, but I think it must have a very good fan score. I bet you.
I bet it does.
I bet it's one of those that like does really bad with the professional critics, but with fans, I think it's very enjoyable, very approachable, which I think was a great way to sum it up. But that's on Netflix. It's I think made by Netflix, so it was very enjoyable. My wife enjoyed it, so it had to be good. So
who's the fish out of water in Bright?
The orc.
Oh, yes. I wouldn't even have thought about it that way, but yeah, you're totally
But you know why I thought about that? Because one of my favorite series from old was McCloud, which was like a 70s cop show, but it was like a detective from West Texas who is in New York City and ends up with the police. New York City.
New York City.
And those things make a lot more sense to people in the real world. Bright took that to the fantasy level, so Bright got mentioned, not McCloud. But yeah, it's you take a cop, and even though he's a cop and he's doing a cop job, it's not even that he was a rookie. That's a different thing. It was because he was an orc being pushed outside of his class, and they've made that abundantly clear, in the show.
Yeah. This also reminds me of like Northern Exposure. Doc Hollywood,
because that one was interesting because they reversed it where it's usually the fish out of water is the weird character. In Northern Exposure, he was the most sane character in the show. At least at the beginning, and that kind of I think changed over time. But everyone in the town was eccentric, and he was not. But you're right; it's the opposite. It was the big city goes to the country. That one can work either way, and they've been done many times in both ways. But yeah, I forgot that was a great show though. I forgot about
Mr. Belvedere.
Mr. Belvedere. That was
British butler, American family.
Okay. All right. Yes. And poor guy. Let's see. Now, here, just like for brainstorming, just sort of, I think you have to kind of look at the elements you want to do. You could either do an extremely fish out of water character, like take a human and put them in a world without humans. That would be extreme. Or you can look at different things, like elements that you can just deviate that element to do it. And these are just some quick brainstorm ones. And if Michael comes up with any, he'll share those too. But the first one is a fish out of water for new societies or new classes. And by classes, I mean like social classes, like being embedded, into, a society like India or Korea, where there's a much more rigid, different type of class system than in the U.S. I think would be very different from someone who has no experience with that. Even if you know it by books, I think living it would be very weird. But that's the same idea with William. It's he's, especially when the classes are extreme. It's a great way to even show that classes are extreme by just taking a character from one class and having them interact at that higher class. But even in societies where it's not as extreme, there's still like, new money versus old money. So there are a couple different ways you can play that. So new money versus old money, it's starting to me like that's a line where I'm not sure if I quite consider that a fish out of water, but it could be argued there, I guess. But new societies definitely. The explorer who finds the lost civilizations, that kind of stuff, or the traveler in ancient times. L. Ron Hubbard.
El Dorado, Road to El Dorado, where they are explorers looking for the
lost city,
of gold.
Yes. I was thinking the movie. I think one of the John Wayne movies was called El Dorado, but it had nothing to do with that. Okay, which caught my mind because I thought that at the time when I watched it, I'm like, this has nothing to do with El Dorado. It's a Western name, I guess. Time travel is the classic one for this. Going all the way back to H.G. Wells. There's always another society there. And they can always speak somehow, which is awesome. It's awesome. But, it makes for good fish out of water kind of stuff. New worlds, obviously. That's like the easy one to tell. You crash an astronaut onto a planet of apes, and you don't even know that you're on the same planet because it's so different than where you came from. The innocent runaway fish out of water. I think this is one that gets used more in drama. I think especially it's like the Midwestern girl goes to New York City, gets caught up in prostitution kind of tropes, is what I think of there, but not necessarily. But it's any time where the character's innocent and they're running from something which forces them to be a fish out of water somewhere else, and you get the drama and or comedy from their learning the new system. But typically with the innocent runaway, those are not usually comedies. Even though I guess in a way you could argue Big was that way, because he was the innocent runaway, and he ran away because he was also big. He was really driven away. Big city / farm. That's the big city, small city. This is every pretty much Lifetime romantic movie ever made. It's always pretty like 90% of the time big city going to small town or small town going to big city. One of the two.
The irony is that one could argue that Superman is fish out of water, but not because he is an alien from another planet since he grew up on Earth, but because he's a farm boy and moves to the city.
Yes, exactly. You're right. That's really funny because technically you could argue New World, but not true because he was raised in the New World. So by yokels. But yeah, it's great. That's funny.
He's a local.
I don't think you could actually argue that,
I can argue that.
No. I think it's not arguable. I think it's just actually so correct that it's not arguable. Body swap transformation movies. I don't know how many those
perfect.
there are.
Yeah, your Freaky Fridays, your
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids,
the hot chick. Yeah, absolutely.
Any of those? Was it Henry? Oh my goodness, the claymation guy. Any of his movies? Have pretty much a fish out of water character story. Henry something House. Name isn't quite coming to me. The Jason the Argonauts guy, the Lost World guy, did all those movies with the claymation characters. Yeah.
Got nothing.
I'm just thinking of him because one of the stations on TV had all of his movies in a loop. You never saw Jason the Argonauts, the older one with the claymation.
I fucking own Jason and the Argonauts.
And you don't know this guy's name? I'm disappointed.
Sorry,
he's a star. Oh my goodness! And you expected me to remember? I'm very disappointed in you.
I didn't expect you to remember. You forget all this shit. It's one of the reasons I'm such a strong co-host is that I can make up for your lacking.
Okay, and now the other very common trope, and where I see this used probably the most, not the most, but it seems to reoccur usually at least once a year, is the common everyday person who's caught up in the spy or criminal world. Spy is usually a little bit more popular than criminal world, but you see that a lot where it's basically any movie with Liam Neeson in the past 10 years. Heck, half the Jackie Chan movies, all of the comedies from action stars, their first comedy is always like the super spy who's in the normal world. So it goes one of the two ways: it's either the super spy in the normal world or the normal person who gets caught up in the super spy world, or criminal, same thing. Just a slightly different set dressing.
Now you have. Did we cover all of these at this point?
All of the elements, unless you can think of any off the top of your head.
I guess just when you see the opposite versions of this.
Yeah. Really, all you need is if you want to show something off, you look for its opposite. You construct your fish out of water and go in.
Mickey Blue Eyes is an innocent person put into the role of a mobster. And then you've got Analyze This, where it's a mobster trying to be put into therapy and thus behaving like a normal person.
Yeah. It's like all these is the opposite you can go with too. Like I see the innocent runaway, but it could be like the criminal trying to hide.
Yep.
That's so common too. Where it's like,
or the criminal trying to get out of his element, trying to put his past behind.
But for whatever reason, he's hiding because it might be like I'm just trying to lay low for a while, or I'm trying to clean up.
Michael Corleone in what was it, the third Godfather, where he's really trying to get out and he keeps getting pulled back in.
They keep burning me back in. And I think he wanted to be a fish out of water, but couldn't. I mean, he kind of was.
I don't know how
he kind of was in the first one.
Wanted to.
He kind of was in the first one.
In the first one, he was. In the first
until
one,
his brother got killed.
To be in until his brother got killed.
Okay. And now, once again, the reason I bring up fish out of water is a lot of times
leave the
there
guns.
Are certain
take the cannolis.
Take the cannolis because you want the cannolis. Trust me, you want the cannolis. Only if you get it from an Italian bakery, though. But the thing to keep in mind is,
of course,
a lot of times there are certain aspects of your world you want to emphasize, and it's usually it kind of goes back to the mission statement. Like if you want to talk about how alien a culture is, you need something to point out its differences. So fish out of water work really good all of the time for those kind of scenarios. Or like I said, I use it for a class struggle, in mine. But, it can be timed any of these things where you're looking for the opposite. You want to show something off. A fish out of water is a world builder's best friend because it allows you to put stuff into stories in a backstory kind of way, where you can fill it in as they go. You're sort of coloring the book as they go. You're coloring that world in as you go for the reader along with the character. And, it's just a great pair up. It doesn't have to be your main character. but someone who's going to be in there enough to show off those elements that you want to show off. Yeah, but there are some dangers, I think. And all of these, there are exceptions to, and that's typically if you're doing it intentionally, typically for comedic effect. But the longer something goes, you need to be careful. For me, the biggest thing I see that annoys me in a lot of stories is they don't adapt. Now, sometimes it makes sense. Like Monk is a fish out of water
all the
everywhere. But that's because of mental illness. Makes sense. But you know what? The show became boring after a while for me because it's kind of the same show every time. Because even if he tries to adapt, he can't. But no adaptation, especially the longer the story is, especially if it's serial in nature, it's going to become boring, no matter how good it is up front. The godlike adaptation trap, and you see this a lot in science fiction, especially older science fiction. Star Trek was really bad for this, but it was like, if you take the main characters and put them into a completely foreign scenario, it's just like they can adapt so quickly. It's the opposite that it's like it's not exceptional, anymore. There's nothing. It's almost like a hand of God fix where they can just adapt through anything without struggle. And if you get stuck with all drama or all humor, but not a little bit of the other one, I think you also will risk it becoming a bit boring. So,
and we don't want boring.
No. And there's nothing wrong. And there might be reasons why you do stuff. So if your art tells you have to do it, just understand what the risk is. Now, I think that's it. Do you have any other dangers you can think up off the top of your head?
Oh, Jeff, there are always dangers to be
related to the topic.
Related to the topic.
Let me be clear.
Well, I'm thinking about it more along the lines of my definition. So for me, I guess it would be quite simply make sure that your character really doesn't belong where he's going to be. And, take advantage of the fact that he's, new. Don't make it so close that it seems silly that you're explaining shit that he probably already knows, or explaining stuff that just is par for the course, depending on where he is or what he's doing.
Make sure it makes character sense, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's where the no adaptation trap really annoys me. Is it's like, okay, this is the fifth time this guy's got stuck at the same simple thing. The more complicated things is one thing, or if there was just like one thing he was stuck on, that would be humorous. But if it's the same constant joke being delivered, or the same drama element you're pulling out, it loses its effect. And like Michael says too, if it doesn't make sense for the character, like you're forcing, like, well, he's from the city originally, but he's a sailor, so he spends more time at sea than in the city. So why would he know how to treat the city guard? Well, he probably would.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is our world building task of the day?
Big shocker. Create a fish out of water character. Now, what I encourage is, if you've already got your world pretty fleshed out, maybe create a character that's off planet, that they have arrived there and they literally have to learn everything. Or you could just say they're from a remote island that has not made it to the mainland, and their island culture is dramatically different.
Yeah, and I think it's easier in ancient times, or if there's a travel restriction, which I think is kind of what you're getting at there.
Yes.
The travel restrictions and worlds really make it easier. It's like on Earth today, you have to go a lot farther away to really feel out of water if you're in a similar environment to where you live.
Yeah, even when I went to Germany, there were only times where I felt out of water. Not a lot.
Yeah. And now for the real world task is think of times you felt like a fish out of water. Because you're going to realize, even though on the big picture you typically don't, there are little things that you just don't fit into. Like, Maybe for you, it was going to a locker room and being surrounded by jocks during gym class. Maybe you felt like a fish out of water there. Or maybe it was, in math class, a place you just felt so out of place that you were uncomfortable and struggled to fit in. Because we all have those moments in our life. And those are great inspiration, for going. The fish out of water is typically big, but it can be subtle. And a great way to flavor other characters or give them those moments where even if they're in their element, there's something that can kind of throw them off. So do you have any final notes for us here, Michael, as we head out into the wild blue water?
I think we've covered the fish out of water character pretty solidly.
Excellent.
I like it.
Everyone have a great week. And if you get a chance, go to facebook.com/groups/Undercroft, or just search for Undercroft under groups, and you should be able to find the Fantasy Worldbuilders Undercroft. Come join us there, share your characters. Have a blast with us.
I would also encourage you, if you have any Amazon purchasing to do, to go to www.garduel.com/Amazon. It'll take you straight to Amazon, and anything you purchase, the show gets a small cut of, which would be super helpful to us.
Yeah, and it doesn't change your price. Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.garduel.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.